Just when you thought the Nikon Z9 was the apex predator of the mirrorless jungle, whispers of its successor, the Z9 II, are making the rounds. Is this an evolution or a revolution? Or is it time to just eat cake? Well, let's dive into the leak lagoon to find out. But if you are serious about staying ahead of the latest camera gear, hit that subscribe button. It helps this channel grow while keeping you in the loop. Rumors are suggesting that Nikon's getting ready to announce the Z9 II in late 2025, likely October. And the release, when it starts shipping, well, that's expected to happen in 2026, Q1 to be precise. But the big question we're all asking, will the Z9 II outpace its predecessor and its rival competitors? The Canon EOS R1 announced last July and started shipping in November. And then there's the Sony A1 II, also announced in 2024. We grabbed the latest leaked specifications from all corners of the internet. We looked at Nikon rumors, we also looked at Reddit, and we also talked to some of our own sources, which have been very accurate. So in terms of the processor, what we're getting a sense of is it's going to have the exact same resolution, 45.7 megapixels. Now, will they improve upon the sensor? Most likely. Could they improve the readout speed? Potentially. But at this point, we don't know what the details are. But it's pretty common that after about 4 years, they're going to update the sensor for one very simple reason, to make it cheaper to produce. So they're going to combine certain things. They're going to make certain things faster, make certain things more efficient. So even though the spec might look identical, it's supposed to be, well, improved. It just makes sense. So at least this is what the latest rumors are saying. And in terms of an image processor, well, everyone's talking about the XP 8. But there is one thing that has been left out that I haven't seen in any of the specifications, and I'd be surprised if Nikon leaves this out. All we have to do is take a look at the Sony A7R5. It was the first mirrorless camera to come out with a dedicated AI processing unit. Then in July of 2025, Canon announced the R5 II and the R1. They're the first Canon cameras to come with a dedicated AI enhanced chip, or an AI processing chip. And it dramatically improved the accuracy of the autofocus system. Not in terms of speed. I mean, all the autofocus systems today, including Panasonic, are very fast. It's the ability to recognize the subject. Human eye detection, head detection, torso detection, you name it. Subject detection. Then there's object detection. Then there's planes, trains, automobiles. The only thing we don't have tracking for right now is boats, snowmobiles, and UFOs. But the autofocus systems are getting very good. And what these new AI processing chips are allowing these cameras to do is to be able to predict where the subject is going. So for example, if I'm shooting my son, we're out in a, well, burnt out field because there was a forest fire that recently went through. And as he's walking towards the trees, he's being partially obscured by brush. The camera knows that he's still there. They can recognize enough of him that they're projecting his path and maintaining focus. And that's a really big deal. So I'd be surprised if Nikon doesn't put in some sort of AI processing chip. Just improving the autofocus system with new AI enhanced capabilities is one thing, but having a dedicated chip allows the autofocus system to be far more responsive and faster because it's not suffering from latency from talking to the image processor or the sensor or some other components on the PCB. So that's really good news. Now, in terms of frame rates, well, we don't expect to see much of a difference between what we see in the Nikon Z9, the current version. As far as the leaked specifications, nobody's telling us in terms of what the current frame rates are, so I'm not going to delve into that aspect. So now it brings us to video specifications. Now we did see some specs that claimed it was going to do 8K up to 120 frames per second. And I shouldn't laugh. Well, the reason why I'm laughing is this is a photography first camera. It's for sports and wildlife photographers, people shooting the Olympics. This is Nikon's flagship camera. And while shooting 8K up to 120 frames per second is great, it doesn't really fit the primary demographic of this camera. 120 frames per second is certainly doable, very doable. I mean, the Red V Raptor does it, and yes, it's not exactly cheap, but it can do that. What we expect to see at the very minimal level is 8K up to 60 frames per second, and all the rumors, all the leaks at this point seem to be backing that up. But 4K, wow, well, I guess since 2020, 4K 120 has kind of been the pinnacle of what everybody's shooting for, at least up until recently. You see, I found some information on the internet indicating that the Nikon Z9 Mark II will actually go up to 4K 240 frames per second. And when I first saw this, I had to read carefully. I thought, okay, so they're going to do 240 frames per second in 1080 like the Canon EOS R5 Mark II, right? No, it actually is in 4K. How likely is this? Well, for me, this would be far more useful, I think, for its primary market than 8K 120. Because if you're shooting sports, fast action, all that kind of stuff where you want to slow things down, then I can definitely see the benefit to this. If it's detailed, it's not sloppy. It's not sloppy 240 frames per second. Because I've seen this with the R5 Mark II, especially if you're shooting in conditions that aren't well lit. 240 is rather soft. It's not very detailed. But again, that's 1080. To do it in 4K, if they can do it right, well, that would be kind of a big deal. We already know that the Nikon Z9 can do Apple ProRes. With the new acquisition of Red, can we now see Apple ProRes at all video modes? Not just 4K, but also 8K? Well, that would be definitely very nice to see. Now, in terms of Full HD or 1920 by 1080, I would expect to see at least 240 frames per second if we can do that in 4K. Now, are they going to go 480? You see what's starting to happen here is if we get these video specifications, they will be wow, but it almost seems like they're trying too hard to double down on the video side of things instead of being what the D6, the D5, the D4, and the Nikon Z9 have always been focused on, and that's a sports and wildlife photographer. If this is true, that we're getting these wild specifications for the video side of the camera, well, then that tells me that Nikon is no longer seeing this as just a sports and wildlife photographer's camera, but a master of everything, a jack of all trades. And if that sounds familiar, well, that's what the Canon EOS R1 was supposed to be a couple of years ago based on a leak put out by Canon Rumors. And the R1, despite being an incredible camera, a top-notch camera, if you go to any football game, any Olympics, you're going to see tons of R1s on the sidelines for a very good reason. It's the best of the best of the best when it comes to that genre, or at least that's what the marketplace sees. The Nikon Z9 has become more of a master of everything. The R1 was supposed to be that, but didn't. They focused primarily on their primary market. So that's really interesting. Now, have I left anything out? We talked about the enhanced AI-driven autofocus system. Now, in terms of the weight, the weight's supposed to be slightly reduced because they're going to be using a new magnesium-lithium alloys, fully articulating screen for versatile shooting angles. Magnesium-lithium. Okay, I know lithium, and you got to be careful with that stuff. That almost sounds like somebody's trolling there. I'm not so sure about that. I definitely, obviously they're going to be using magnesium, but I'm not. I used to know all my elements on the periodic table. Metallurgy, I've just got a little bit of a red flag there. This might be perfectly normal. I'm just not sure. And of course, dual CF Express Type B cards. And let's see, anything else here? Potential 5G connectivity. That would be really good. And see, this is where I think it's very important to have smaller file sizes. Because people that are shooting at the Olympics or other events where they need to get the results back, having cellular access would be a big deal. But if you're dealing with very large files, yeah, not so much. Really what you want to be able to do in a lot of those situations is to take simply a JPEG, a low resolution JPEG, maybe around, I don't know, 24 megapixels, and send that off. And that's where a 45.7 megapixel sensor can be a bit of an issue, right? And that's why we still see 24 megapixels on flagship cameras, is because there are certain photojournalists and certain sports photographers that need to get that image off there very quickly and transferred. And a lot of times in these locations, they're not getting the best bandwidth, and for very good reason. They're there along with a lot of other photographers, and sometimes they're in locations that don't have a very good cellular infrastructure, so the smaller, the better. All right, now it's time for a bit of a reality check and pricing. You recall that many months ago, I started reporting about the Nikon Z9 Mark II, saying that we would get an announcement late this year, probably around October, early November. Well, I haven't received any other specifications. I reached out to the source to find out more information to ask if we're able to validate any of the specifications. And the source said to me, no, nothing at this point. So all the specifications that I was able to gather from all corners of the internet, from Nikon rumors to Reddit, take it with a grain of salt. I mean, some of them make perfect sense, such as taking the same sensor and improving upon it by keeping the resolution the same. It doesn't make sense to jack this thing up to 61 megapixels. I can guarantee you that's not going to happen. It would make more sense for Nikon to split the Z1 into a Z1 and a Z1C, more of a video-centric one and more of a still-centric camera. But I just don't see them doing that. It would make sense, I just don't see them doing that. An updated image processor, it makes sense. This is their flagship camera. Video specifications, 8K up to 60 frames per second, 4K up to 120 frames per second. All those other ones that I talked about, they do seem a little bit grand, and if we got it and they did it right, wow, it would be impressive. In terms of stills, continuous shooting, I would expect to see pretty much the same as what we're seeing with the Z9, but I expect the hit rate to improve even more. I expect the autofocus system not to get faster, but to get better, more predictive analytics. And that's why I would really like to see, I expect to see, a new AI processing chip. Will they do it, or will they just add it as code and firmware? Well, they could, but you're going to get better economies of scale. And with Sony and Canon doing it, Nikon's more or less, well, it's essential to do it. So in terms of the date, well, I'm sticking behind what my source is telling me, and with everything that's going on in the world and all the tariffs, it shouldn't really be impacted by that. And even Canon forecasting in their earnings saying that by December timeframe, a lot of the impacts of the tariffs could be, well, understood at the very least, but some things might be rolled back. We'll have a much clearer picture of what's going on in the marketplace. So an announcement in 2025, late October, early November, makes sense. And when we did have the announcement of the Z9 II, it was around October the 28th. They didn't start shipping until, what was it, like December the 24th? So a Q1 or January 2026 shipping certainly seems to make an awful lot of sense. So what about pricing? Well, we all know what's going on right now, that at least in the United States, they're facing tariffs from Japan of around 10%. And I've kind of lost count on tariffs coming in from China. So I don't know where the Z9 is manufactured. If it's primarily manufactured in Japan, there could be a 10%, but there's many things that can impact that. So let's talk about the pricing of the current models. So when the Z9 was released, we were looking at $5,500. The competition, well, the Canon EOS, well, the R1 didn't exist at the time, but it's out now, so it's $62.99. That's $200 less than the 1DX Mark III when it came out in 2020. The Sony A7 A1 II, I believe that's right around $6,500. So even if the Nikon Z9 gets a bump up of, let's just say, 10%, well, that still puts it in at less than the other two. And that would probably bring it up to around $59.99, which is less than the other two. I think that's a good news story here. So I don't think you're going to see a lot of pain, Nikon customers, regarding the Nikon Z9 II. But any price increase is not fun. I think what matters more than anything else, and I think what you really want to be focused on if you're interested in the Nikon Z9 II, is how is it going to improve your workflow? How is it going to improve your hit rate? You want to be a one shot, right? To be able to get it on that one shot and get every other shot subsequently thereafter. I think that's where these cameras come in. It's all about speed and accuracy, the best of the best of the best that that company can do, and hopefully better than the competition. So I am really excited to see what the Nikon Z9 Mark II may bring, but at this point, I don't have any confirmed specifications at this point. I don't have any credible sources telling me these are the list of specifications. So unfortunately, that's where I'm going to end things today. I want to say thank you very much for tuning into this video, for watching. It's very much appreciated. If you are interested in picking up any gear right now, take a look. I just checked at the time of filming that we still see the Nikon Z8 $500 off. The Canon R5, the R5 II, also on sale. So despite what I was told about May the 1st, we're still seeing a lot of retailers keeping the prices not only low, but on sale, and that's good news. And one last thing, take a look at the membership levels. I just got a new product yesterday. It's a new microphone from Canon, the DM1ED. Kind of rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? It's the one that plugs into the hot shoe, locks into the hot shoe, and too many times I've gone out shooting, I didn't properly press the cable from the mic into the camera, and I got no audio in the camera or on the unit itself. And it's partly because I'm getting older, and if I don't have the right glasses on me, if it seems like it clicked in, I trust it. I can't tell that it's clicked in. So I have an unboxing for my Insider members. If you're interested, click the join button to see the different pricing options. Anyhow, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Have yourself a great day, and we'll see you again soon. Oh, I almost forgot a disclosure. If you do use my affiliate links down below, I do get a small commission back of between 2 and 5%. And that's quite literally what helps keeps the lights on. I almost made an entire video without making some enunciation errors. Anyhow, have yourself a great day, a great week, and we'll see you again soon.